Sex can be messy and sticky and loud, and when you're a neurodivergent person or when you're just generally a sensitive person, this can be a lot. And I noticed over my time on YouTube and on the internet, there's always a lot of content on how to make sex more pleasurable, or how to make sex more fun, or how to have orgasms more, or, anything along those lines. But there's very little content in the span of things about how to make sex more accessible, and more specifically, how do you reduce sensory overload or sensory overwhelm, or in other words, making sex a little bit less overstimulating. If you are new here, I'm Taylor, and I am a sexual health educator, and I am a nerd about finding ways to make sex and talking about sex and our health more pleasurable. In my spare time, I do spend a lot of time on Reddit scrolling, and specifically I am a fan of subreddits like Actually Autistic and, things for neurodivergent people, because I myself identify as a person who is neurodivergent. And I see a lot of threads over the span of months where people are saying, I am in a relationship, I'm a neurodivergent person, I'm an autistic person, and I find sex just too much. I don't enjoy sex, or I can't get in the moment, or I don't want to have sex because I just find it so overwhelming, but I want to want it. I want to reduce these things. And over time, I started realizing that there really is a need for a resource like this. And even myself, I've experienced things like this where I feel very overwhelmed. I'm somebody who can get sensitive to things very, very easily, but in particular moments. So I really hate loud noises. That can put me off for quite a long time if I hear a very sudden loud noise. I do not like to feel overwhelmed and like just too much is happening at once. And so obviously that can cause some problems when you're trying to be, easy, cool in the moment. So I thought that I would use a few tips that I use when I'm experiencing overwhelming sensory stuff when it comes to sex, and I am going to combine it with some of the research that I have read. So first of all, if you're not familiar, I wanted to just quickly talk about what exactly sensory-friendly sex would be. So sensory-friendly as a term means that it reduces overwhelming sensory input, and it also includes increasing that sensory intake for a person who needs a little bit more sensation. So I've worked for many, many years in disability support services, and some of the things that I've seen over that time in people, just to give you an example, is a person who might be very overwhelmed by sensory experiences might wear headphones to try and block that. I know myself, if I'm going to see fireworks, or I'm at a loud concert, or walking down the street, sometimes like I'll use little earphones, or I'll use my noise canceling headphones, and it just kind of reduces that extra noise and makes it a little less overwhelming. And then I've also worked with people in disability support services who will need bright lights in their room, for example. So I worked with somebody who had one of those like changing bulbs that would put different colors and shapes and things like that around their room, and that would really help regulate them. So that's sort of the general overview of what sort of a sensory friendly sex experience might be. Somebody who either needs that sensitivity taken off, or they need it heightened. And note that this is not a comprehensive guide on making sex more sensory friendly. Instead, I would view it as just a few tips that could potentially be helpful. Everybody's bodies are really, really different, and there's so much diversity in the way that we experience neurodiversity and intimacy and all of those sorts of things. So if this doesn't work for you, maybe try something different. If you have something that does work for you, feel free to add it into the comment section below so other people can learn from that. The first thing that I will mention is lube. So everybody loves lube, or you should love lube no matter what. It's always there to help make a sexual experience a little bit more pleasurable. And one of the downsides of lube is that it is sort of a sensory nightmare. So oftentimes lube can be sticky. It can feel weird and slimy on your hands, and it can also get everywhere. It can make you feel like you need to take a shower. It might feel uncomfortable. And when I was going through Reddit, this was something that I saw come up a couple of times of like, this adds to the sensory nightmare of the experience, and I can completely relate to this. I can completely relate to using lube and putting it on your hands and then trying to subtly find somewhere to wipe it off because you hate that feeling, and that can just kind of take you out of the moment. More of a pricey option, but essentially if you go specifically to areas of a sex store where they have supplies for anal sex, you can get these little droppers basically, and you can draw up the lube and then you can actually squirt it in the specific area that you want. But you don't need to go to a sex store for something like that. You can get pipettes for that, like those little science pipettes that could easily draw it up and then just put it exactly where you want it so you don't have to get it on your hands. You can also use little samples of lube, like in the little packets if you are on a budget. Many sexual health nonprofits can actually give these out for free, so you can try that out and see if it works. Another thing, if you find that lube is really sticky and uncomfortable, if you are using silicone, try switching to a water-based, or just try switching the lube in general. I know a good brand that's really not sticky and actually feels quite nice and not overwhelming on your skin is Sliquid. So it's a water-based lube. Everybody's body is very different, and what we enjoy and what we like is very different. And I think sometimes we can see what happens in porn or what happens in movies or what happens just when people are generally talking about sex and think that that's the way that it should be. And for some people, that's just not the case. So one example of that is like clitoral stimulation. It can be very pleasurable for most people, and I think the way that we see it represented is just full on. But there are a lot of people who just cannot handle that. It's way too much. This is an area with a lot of nerve endings, and when you're already a sensitive person, no matter if you do have sensory processing issues or if you're neurodivergent or not, our bodies can just sometimes be different and take certain amounts of stimuli in different ways. So if you do find that you are too sensitive and you find that it's just too much to get a sensation in particular areas, and I'm specifically talking about intimate areas, here are a few tips for that. So number one, you could try using a dental dam if you are somebody with a vulva. So a dental dam is honestly something that many people should know about no matter what. They're really great. They're like a little piece of latex that you can put over the area, and it creates a barrier for STBBIs and reducing STIs for the most part. I would say that this is a really good thing that you might want to try out if you feel really, really sensitive when it comes to oral pleasure, or if you are too sensitive when it comes to using toys as well. So for example, if a vibrator is just too much, you can try using a dental dam over the area or over the toy and just seeing if that kind of creates a little bit of a barrier for you. You could also try using underwear. So this is something that you don't often see represented in the media, but something that is still a very valid way to create a little bit of a barrier so you're not as overwhelmed. So if you find a vibrator is too sensitive, or if you find oral is a little bit too much for you, try using a thin pair of underwear. And you can play around with different materials and what feels good and what doesn't feel good, but that might help create a little bit of a barrier for you as well. Another thing that I've seen a lot of people have problems with when it comes to sex and intimacy is tastes. Sex can be very unpredictable when it comes to what things might taste like and also textures. And so there are a few things that are pretty easy to experiment with and find that might help. So number one is flavored lubes. Flavored lubes are a really good way of sort of creating a sensory experience that you can predict. So you can go to like a sex store or order online different flavors that you specifically choose. You can have some that are a little bit more natural than others. You can have some that are really, really strong and going to mask that taste. Some that taste like candy, all of those sorts of things. So it creates that predictability, and it also masks anything that you may want to mask. So flavored condoms are another thing that you could try and play around with as well. It creates a more predictable feeling for the mouth, something that you can expect. And it also can reduce any kind of texture that you might have issues with. I know some people might also have issues with lube and how it feels in their mouth, so a flavored condom might be something to try out as well. And finally, I think that this one's actually the most important, and I almost think that it could go first too, but letting go of neurotypical and also heteronormative expectations for sexuality is a really, really good way of having sex that is sensory friendly and would help you really, really enjoy sex. So this could encompass a whole range of things. You could literally write a book about this, but just a few things that came to mind just while we're talking about tips is, number one, you don't need to do things because you see them a lot or because a partner is expecting them or all of these sorts of things. Do things that feel comfortable to you and that you want to do. So one example is following. Obviously that can be an unpredictable, overwhelming experience for many people. There are a lot of expectations on people who, might do oral sex for their partner to swallow. If that's not something that you want to do, you don't have to do it, right? And you can find other ways and communicate with your partner to find something that you'll both find really pleasurable and safe. Other thing is scheduling. A lot of people feel that sex has to be this like spontaneous, sudden, like grabbing, passionate thing. And that just doesn't need to be the case. Many people that have brains like mine and maybe yours like predictability and like routine. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with scheduling and planning for sex. If that helps both partners feel more comfortable and know what to expect and create a good experience, let go of these old assumptions that sex has to be a particular way and try out something like scheduling. In general, look at these things that happen during intimate experiences from a lens where you're challenging whether or not we're doing this because we really like to do it or because we're told that you have to or because it's hot when it's done this way. And you'll actually find that sex can be a lot more hot and a lot more pleasurable when you do challenge those things and do things in the way that you and your partner or just you yourself, if you're playing alone, enjoy. So these were all tips that I have for making sex a little bit more sensory friendly. Again, just a disclaimer, this may not work for you. Maybe some of this works for you, maybe others don't work for you. If you do have tips for other people, leave them in the comments below. And I think it's really exciting for us to be able to have conversations where we can kind of add different things and, change different things and say, this works for me, right? So I am excited to hear from you. Thank you for watching this video, and I will chat with you soon.